This is Joe Biden, the resident of the United States. As you may have heard, Biden, for the second year in a row, decided to skip the traditional Super Bowl Sunday interview, which had the potential to reach over 100 million viewers. Instead, 2 weeks later, Biden would go on Late Night with Seth Meyers for some reason, and it was promoted on TikTok.
Mr. President, I just want to say I'm so sorry about my bad impression of you.
No problem. Forget it, man. Not a problem.
Thanks.
You can take him off the list.
Joe Biden joking about a hit list. Just fantastic. Anyway, before Joe Biden's sit-down interview, Seth Meyers would joke about the bad orange man.
Former President Trump told supporters last week that former First Lady Melania Trump will soon be making more regular appearances on the campaign trail. Not if she heard what you called her last week.
I call up my wife, our great First Lady. She was a great first. People loved her. Yeah, people love her. Oh, look at that. Wow. Mercedes, that's pretty good.
I'm sorry. Mercedes? You had a nuclear meltdown when Biden messed up the president of Egypt and you can't remember your wife's name? Guys, I hate to say it, his mind is slipping. I think he's too old to run.
You see what he did there, right? Everyone knows that Joe Biden's memory is shot and that he's too old for a second term, but Seth Meyers flipped it around and was being ironic and said it about Trump. And they say that female comedians aren't funny. Anyway, when Joe Biden finally sat down with Seth Meyers, he would read the following off of well-placed cue cards.
You got to take a look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am, but he can't remember his wife's name.
Yeah.
And,
Maybe, but Donald Trump tends to remember simple yet important things, like what year we're currently in.
What would you want to do? What's your 2024 agenda? Because I feel like we live in such crazy times that is one of the things I feel we hear less about.
look, the 2020 agenda is to finish the job.
Gee, I just don't understand why Joe Biden wouldn't do that Super Bowl interview. Anyway, I need to point out that President Trump didn't actually forget Melania's name. Allow me to explain. This is Mercedes Schlapp, Trump's former White House Director of Strategic Communications and wife of CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp, both of whom were in attendance during Trump's 1.5-hour speech.
And I want to thank Matt and Mercedes Schlapp, two great people, along with the entire staff. Thank you very much, Mercedes. Thanks, Matt.
And here's Trump joking about who he was going to blame if he didn't do well in the South Carolina primary.
So now I'm going to the place I'm supposed to be. I'm going to South Carolina. I'm supposed to be there. And if I do poorly, I'm going to blame Mercedes. Forget about Matt. I'm going to blame Mercedes.
So clearly he is referring to Mercedes Schlapp. So watch the clip again where Trump allegedly called his wife Melania Mercedes.
I call up my wife, our great First Lady. She was a great first. People loved her. Yeah, people love her. Oh, look at that. Wow. Mercedes, that's pretty good. Yeah, she's good.
So for clarity, he was reacting to the standing ovation that the crowd gave at the mere mention of Melania Trump. And then he reacted to it.
Oh, look at that. Wow. Mercedes, that's pretty good.
So the accusation that Trump forgot his wife's name is fake news. But even if he did, in the cosmic scheme of things, Joe Biden calling the president of Egypt the president of Mexico is much, much worse.
As you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate.
So Joe Biden, of all people, has no right to criticize anyone regarding their memory. Now, if you follow me on X, and why wouldn't you, you would have seen the following gem that I posted from a private campaign event in San Francisco. There is no audio or video, but we do have the official White House transcript. Right now, there are 1,000 billionaires in America. It was 780 before the recession. The recession. It was recession, but before we got into the problem of the pandemic, dealing with the pandemic, but now there are 1,000 of them. That's right. Joe Biden could not remember what caused the recession of 2020, and an audience member had to remind him that it was the pandemic. And that is shocking, even by Joe Biden standards. Next, while standing in front of a portrait of Abraham Lincoln in the state dining room at the White House, Biden attempted to quote from Lincoln's inaugural address.
And you know, stand here in front of this portrait of the man behind me here. He said, and I want to make sure I get the quote exactly right.
Spoiler alert, he won't.
He said, the better angel, he said, we must address the council and adjust the better angels of our nature.
Okay, so no, Joe Biden didn't get it exactly right, let alone remotely right. Lincoln never said, we must address the council or adjust the better angels. And this isn't a memory thing, because he's reading from cue cards. Furthermore, when you add words to a famous quote, you're not being accurate.
And we do well to remember what else he said. He said, we're not enemies, but we're friends. This is in the part of the Civil War. He said, we're not enemies, but we're friends. We must not be enemies.
So much for that famous Joe Biden accuracy. Womp womp. Now, at the governor's ball dinner, Joe Biden made what is easily one of the most disingenuous things that has ever come out of his mouth.
And I mean this sincerely. Politics has gotten too bitter. Democrats and Republicans. Politics has gotten too personally. It just is. It's just not like it was.
Oh, really? The following is from the transcript of another campaign event where he started ranting about MAGA Republicans. You know, we have a choice to make, and to make a contrast, which I think is crystal clear, I'm often quoted as saying, don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative. Well, this alternative is a different breed of cat. No, I'm serious. Look, folks, all kidding aside, but the truth is, I've been a senator since 1972. Joe Biden hasn't been a senator since 2009, which is 15 years ago, but whatever. I got elected in 72, and the prospect of, here's what's going on. I've served with real racists. I served with Strom Thurmond. I served with all these guys that have set terrible records on race. But guess what? These guys are worse. These guys are worse. Biden claims that politics has gotten too bitter, yet he has no problem calling Republicans racists, which of course is deeply ironic considering Joe Biden's record on race. In the 1970s, Joe Biden was what the New York Times described as the Democrats' anti-busing crusader who led an effort in the Senate to end court-ordered busing. The Times wrote, Mr. Biden has said that his record on school desegregation has been misrepresented, and he maintains that he supported busing as a remedy for the intentionally discriminatory policies that kept white and black students in separate schools in the South. But a review of hundreds of pages of congressional records, as well as interviews with education experts and Biden contemporaries in Wilmington and Washington, suggests that his opposition to busing was far more sweeping than he has led voters to believe. In other words, Joe Biden is a liar trying to cover up his racist past. Hey, I don't make the rules. And to drive that point home, on July 22nd, 1977, then Senator Joe Biden said the following about the busing issue. Unless we do something about this, my children are going to grow up in a jungle. The jungle being a racial jungle with tensions having built so high that it is going to explode at some point. So for clarity, Joe Biden said that if you force whites and blacks to go to the same school, it will create a tension-filled racial jungle. And Joe Biden is trying to gaslight Americans into thinking that his racist record is being misinterpreted.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it.
But it's not about how we think about it. It's about how racist Joe Biden thinks about it. And remember, this is the same Joe Biden that said, if you're black and you vote for Trump instead of him, that you're not black.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
And remember that time when a black reporter asked a question that Biden didn't like, and then Biden responded by asking if he was on drugs?
Please clarify specifically, have you taken a cognitive test?
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying you, before you got in this program, if you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not, what do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say to President Trump?
And what makes that even cringier is that he's making flippant remarks about cocaine and drug use despite his own son's extensive history with drug use. In 2014, Hunter Biden was kicked out of the Navy Reserve because a drug test detected cocaine in his system.
You take a test where you're taking cocaine or not, what do you think, huh?
And at the time of Joe Biden's interview with Errol Morris, Hunter Biden had recently entered recovery. Joe Biden's insensitivity and callousness is off the charts.
Why the hell would I take a test?
Anyway, on the issue of mental fitness, Joe Biden just had his annual physical, and White House press secretary / historical figure Karine Jean-Pierre was asked why Biden didn't take a cognitive exam.
The president doesn't need a cognitive test. That is not my assessment. That is not my assessment. That is the assessment of the president's doctor. That is also the assessment of the neurologist, who has also made that assessment as well.
So Joe Biden, who has been deemed an elderly man with a poor memory, who recently claimed that he spoke to several world leaders who had died decades prior, a man who forgot the pandemic, a man who needs cue cards with instructions on how to enter a room and sit down in a chair, and consistently gets lost walking off a stage, doesn't need a cognitive test. Makes sense to me. What's your problem?
And, and you've heard us say this, and I'll reiterate this, the president's doctor has said, if you look at what this president, the president who is also the commander-in-chief, he passes a cognitive test every day.
What?
Look, I think folks need to understand that the president passes, again, a cognitive test every day.
So Joe Biden doesn't need a cognitive test because he passes a cognitive test every day. Got it.
If you look at what a clinical cognitive test is actually, what it actually does, it is a 15-minute appointment that is administered by someone that most of the time people don't actually know.
Guys, Joe Biden is busy. He doesn't have the time to take a 15-minute test administered by a stranger. Come on, man.
But given that there's been so much scrutiny and you say there's no problem, he'd pass the test every day, why not just have his doctor administer the test and then case closed?
Because the doctor doesn't believe that he needs one, because including the neurologist doesn't believe he needs one.
Translation? Joe Biden's doctor and neurologist know that Biden would fail it with flying colors. You don't have to administer a test if you already know the results, I guess. Anything else, Karine?
I'm not a doctor.
You sure aren't, Karine. You sure aren't. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time, if there is next time.